Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. One of the very common questions we get asked here at the Battleship is, why does our helicopter have Navy written on it? Shouldn't it say Air Force? Not that long ago, like within the last 2 years, the Navy's Chief of Information Office released a poll to the general public, and one of the questions had to do with what the public perception of the Navy is, what job the Navy does, and it was something like 20% of respondents assumed that the Air Force operated aircraft carriers as opposed to the Navy. So the question we're going to try and answer in today's video is, why does the Navy have airplanes? We have an Air Force. Something that a lot of people don't realize is the Army has more aircraft than the Air Force and more boats than the Navy. Like the simple truth is, the various armed services all operate some of the same stuff. But that's okay, because they speak different languages and they're doing different missions. For example, during World War II and beyond, the Air Force operated, well, the Army Air Corps at this point, operated what are called crash boats, so that if a plane goes down, their crash boats can go and pick up the pilots.
A unique life-saving service which includes these stout, fast ships always cruising within radio call of the plane. Communication has been established between ship and plane, and all the necessary details will be sent to keep this mid-ocean rendezvous that means deliverance and life.
Which isn't to say that Navy ships wouldn't rescue downed pilots if they were able to. Navy ships and even Coast Guard cutters operated as plane guards during multiple wars. American submarines pick up American aviators quite frequently. For example, future President George H.W. Bush is rescued when his Avenger gets shot down by a submarine, but he's a naval aviator. The simple truth of the matter is that the different armed services speak completely different languages. They are extremely insular, and so their different aviation communities come up with different terms and code words for very specific things. This has a benefit because it means if our enemies are listening in on our radio chatter, they don't necessarily know what we're talking about. It has a detriment because when these different services try to operate next to each other, they realize that they have different words for what altitude the aircraft is flying at, and which is why it's very important that the military does both inter-service exercises, so the different services work together, and international exercises, so that you learn the sorts of words that, say, our British allies use when they're the British operate the F-35, the Americans operate the F-35. They speak the same language, but they do not. So these exercises give them experience working together so that they can start to pick up on the mannerisms, the languages, the different training quirks of each other. And training is a big deal. In the Air Force, you're landing your bird on a runway most of the time. Many Navy aircraft are designed to land on aircraft carriers. Aircraft carriers are significantly smaller than an Air Force runway. They are moving both at a speed and also pitching and rolling. So there is a lot of extra training that goes into training a naval aviator to land on an aircraft carrier, that it doesn't make any sense to train a pilot that's in the Air Force to do. Training a pilot is one of the most expensive things in the military. Pilots, even if they stay in the military long term, are going to be around for a set career, and it takes a tremendous amount of training to get them proficient at whatever their given task is, because learning to fly a plane is not the same as learning a bicycle. When you pick up that bicycle after 10 years, you can ride it again. You get back in a cockpit of a plane after a couple of weeks without flying, and you need a lot of refresher training. Those skills are perishable, and so constant weekly training is required to maintain your proficiency in an aircraft. So with all that expense, it doesn't make sense to train all these different pilots to do something that only one branch does. It is important to remember that just because this is how the United States does things does not mean it's that way around the world. For example, pretty famously during World War II, the German Luftwaffe, their air force, controlled all of the aircraft in Nazi Germany. So the Navy is building an aircraft carrier, Graf Zeppelin, and she's 90% complete. In 1941, when Bismarck sorties, Graf Zeppelin is nearly complete. She could have been completed and escorted Bismarck, and her Me-109s could have shot down the Swordfish, and Bismarck would have made it back to France. Everybody wins. Everybody who's Nazi, at least. But Hermann Göring, the chief of the Luftwaffe, wouldn't work with Erich Raeder, the head of the Kriegsmarine, because of the inter-service rivalries. They're competing for the same budget. You know, this happens in the United States too, the different services competing for the same budget. Well, because the German Air Force doesn't want to divert some of their aircraft and some of their best pilots to operate on a Navy ship, it requires modification. You can't just land an Air Force plane on a Navy ship. The landing is shorter, so you have to have a stronger frame to take that slam down on the deck. You have to have a tail hook to catch a wire because you don't just taxi to a gentle stop. Like there are modifications that have to be made. You cannot take a regular standard Me-109 or Ju-87 and drop them on Graf Zeppelin. You have to make a specific model of that is reinforced with carrier operations. You got to take your best pilots and train them to land on that shorter runway. And then if it happens successfully, the Kriegsmarine has 3 other aircraft carriers being planned. So then you're going to lose more pilots, more planes, more funding. Aircraft carriers are expensive. So it's better to just fight and not give them any aircraft at all so that they cancel that airplane and you continue to have the Führer's respect instead of them. Something very similar happens with the United States at the end of World War II, in that the Air Force has the monopoly on nuclear deterrence. And so a bunch of Navy ships are decommissioned, and a brand new Navy aircraft carrier, the United States, is scrapped, barely completed, which leads to the revolt of the admirals. So because they're fighting over budget in the post-war world, it is detrimental to various systems. So these are some of the reasons why the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army all maintain their own aircraft and their own boats. Let us know in the comments section down below if you knew which branch of the service operated aircraft carriers. Do you think you know anybody who would get that wrong? Do you think it makes sense that all of these services are operating boats and planes when really it's a core part of one service's mission? Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support, and there's a link in the description below if you'd like to continue donating to support the museum and our channel. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about the museum. Thanks for watching.